What happens when one of television's most beloved hosts suddenly finds himself face to face with a guest who refuses to play by the rules? In just 36 seconds, a single barbed remark would rupture the carefully crafted atmosphere of one of Britain's most iconic chat shows and send a shockwave rippling through the studio. The stage looked like any other night's, the iconic red chair gleaming under the lights, the audience buzzing with anticipation. Graham Norton poised with his trademark warmth and wit. Nothing, absolutely nothing prepared him for what followed. She emerged to polite applause, settling into the chair with a poised confidence that felt different. Where most guests arrived ready to laugh, swap stories, and enjoy the easy banter, her demeanor carried a chill that suggested this interview wasn't heading anywhere familiar. Graham opened with his usual charm. "Welcome, welcome. So lovely to have you. We've been looking forward to this." Her reply came sharp as glass. "I'm sure you have. I imagine the ratings will be excellent tonight." A nervous ripple moved through the audience. Was it sarcasm, a joke, or the start of something else entirely? Graham kept his smile. "Well, we always hope people tune in. Now you've had quite the year. Tell us what you've been up to." She leaned back, posture rigid. "I've been navigating a world determined to misunderstand me at every turn. But that's what happens when you challenge the status quo." His eyebrows ticked upward. He checked his notes, then her face. "Right. Well, I think a lot of people admire that about you. Speaking of which, your recent project, not all of it's been fair attention though, has it, Graham?" She cut in. "The media twists whatever it wants to fit its narrative, and you would know you're part of that media." The temperature in the room dropped. Graham's smile held, but his shoulders tightened just slightly. "I like to think we're here to have a good time," he said gently, "to let people share their stories authentically." She laughed, but there was no humor. Authentically. Interesting word. How authentic can anything be when it's edited, packaged, and sold as entertainment? The other two guests on the couch shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't playful banter anymore. This was something brittle and dangerous. Graham tried steering back. "We're not here to twist anything. We just want to hear from you. Your fans want to know what's next." "My fans," she repeated, slicing the word in half. "Yes, let's talk about the people who actually support me. Unlike certain institutions that shall remain nameless, though everyone knows exactly who I mean." Silence blanketed the room. Graham cleared his throat. "I think we can all appreciate your challenges. But perhaps we could focus on some positive things, your work, your projects." She turned toward him fully, eyes narrowing. "Positive things? You want me to sit here and pretend everything is wonderful?" "That's exactly the problem, Graham. People expect me to smile, be grateful, and never speak honestly about what I've endured." "I'm not asking you to pretend," he said calmly. "Only suggesting that our audience might enjoy hearing about what excites you." "What excites me," she snapped, "is truth. Not being silenced. Not being told by someone like you how I should behave in an interview." The audience gasped. One of the actors whispered to the other. Graham set down his note cards, subtle sign longtime viewers knew well. "If you feel I've told you how to behave, I apologize," he said carefully. "That wasn't my intention. I'm just trying to have a conversation." "A conversation on your terms," she fired back, "where you decide what's acceptable. I'm done being controlled." "Nobody is trying to control you," Graham replied. "You're welcome to discuss whatever you'd like. But our audience came here to enjoy themselves. Surely we can find some common ground." She stood up. The abruptness snapped every eye toward her. "Common ground? The only common ground here is that I've been mistreated, lied about, and expected to swallow it with grace. I'm done." Graham remained seated, concern flickering in his expression. "Please sit down. We can talk about this." Graham? We can't." Her voice rose, trembling with contained fury. "Because talking requires listening. It requires caring. It requires more than collecting sound bites for tomorrow's headlines." Producers hovered in the wings. Camera operators froze, unsure where to aim. The audience didn't dare move. Graham slowly stood, hands open, voice softening. "I hear you. I genuinely do. And if I've done something that made you feel unheard, I apologize. But we can work through this." She shook her head violently, as if rejecting the very sound of his voice. "You don't hear me. None of you do. You hear what you want to hear. You see what you want to see. And then you judge me based on those distortions." "I promise you that's not what's happening," Graham said, steady even as the room trembled with tension. "I have nothing but respect for you and your experiences." But shouting at Minot, the audience, at the production team who worked hard to welcome you, that won't help anyone understand your perspective. Her cheeks flushed a furious red. "Don't you dare lecture me about respect. Don't pretend you're the reasonable one when you invited me here, knowing full well you'd try to sanitize everything." "I wanted to say, I invited you here to be yourself," Graham replied. And for the first time all evening, a thin edge of frustration cut through his voice. "And you're certainly doing that. But being yourself doesn't have to mean being hostile to everyone around you." She jabbed a finger toward him. "Hostile? You think this is hostile? Try living my life for one day, Graham. Try facing what I faced, and then tell me how calm you'd be." "I would never claim to know what you've been through," Graham said quietly. "But in this moment, you have a choice about how you want this to go. A choice." She let out a brittle laugh. "That's rich. I haven't had a real choice in years. Everything I do is scrutinized, criticized, picked apart by people who've never walked a single step in my shoes." The other guests had now discreetly risen from the couch, drifting toward the side of the stage like people trying to escape a sudden storm. The audience sat frozen, afraid to clap, boo, or breathe too loudly. Graham tried one more time. "Then help us understand. Please sit back down. Take a breath. Help us understand what you're going through. That's all anyone wants." "No," she snapped, laughing with bitter disbelief. "What everyone wants is a spectacle. Drama. Tears. You want me to break down so you can all feel better about your own lives?" "Nobody wants to see you break down," Graham said firmly. "We want a genuine conversation, but that requires both people to participate in good faith." "Good faith." Her eyes blazed. "You want to talk to me about good faith after everything that's been printed about me? After all the lies, the manipulation, the character assassination? And you want to lecture me on good faith?" "Yes," Graham said, unwavering. "Because whatever others have done, I'm not them. I'm here right now trying to give you a platform to speak your truth. But you have to actually speak it, not attack everyone in the room." She snatched her purse from the floor. "I don't have to do anything. And I certainly don't have to sit here and be patronized by someone who thinks he's being magnanimous by giving me a few minutes of airtime." A low murmur rippled through the audience anger. Confusion, sympathy, all mixing into a single, uneasy hum. Graham stayed composed, his professionalism almost surreal under the circumstances. "Nobody is patronizing you," he said. "But I am asking you to consider that everyone here, this crew, this audience, your fellow guests, came with good intentions. They came to laugh, to learn, to enjoy the evening, not to be berated." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something low and unnervingly calm. "You think you're so clever, don't you? With your quips and your charm and your perfect little reputation. But guess what, Graham? Not everyone is impressed. Not everyone thinks you're wonderful. The other guests exchanged stunned glances. This had gone far beyond awkward. Graham's voice, when it came, was soft but firm as steel. "I never asked you to think I'm wonderful. I asked you to be a guest on a talk show. And if you can't do that with basic courtesy, then perhaps this isn't the right place for you tonight." Her eyes widened in outrage. "Are you throwing me off your show? I'm saying that if you can't treat me, my staff, and this audience with respect, then I think it's best if we end this now." She looked around, waiting for anyone to step in. No one did. The silence swallowed her whole. "Fine," she spat. "I don't need this circus. I don't need your approval or your platform or any of it." She turned sharply and stormed toward the exit. Graham called after her, his voice still impossibly composed. "I'm sorry this didn't work out. I genuinely am." She stopped mid-stride and snapped back toward him, eyes blazing. "No, you're not. You're thrilled. You'll dine out on this for months, won't you? The difficult guest who couldn't handle the great Graham Norton." "That's not how I see this at all," Graham said softly. There was exhaustion in his voice now, not anger. "I see someone who's clearly going through something painful, someone who took it out on a room full of people who wished her nothing but well." Her final words sliced through the air like a blade. "Keep telling yourself that, Graham. Whatever helps you sleep at night." And with that, she disappeared through the exit doors. The studio froze. No applause, no chatter, just stunned, suffocating silence. After several long suspended seconds, Graham turned back toward the audience, composed but visibly shaken. He walked to his desk, picked up his glass, took a measured sip of water, then looked straight into the camera. "Well," he said quietly, "that was unexpected." The audience erupted, scattered, claps, shocked laughter, gasps. People mumbling to each other, trying to make sense of what they'd just seen. The remaining guests hesitantly returned to the couch, their faces a mixture of disbelief and concern. Graham straightened his jacket, a small, wry smile forming. "I think we might need a moment to regroup, don't you?" One of the actors finally broke the tension. "Graham, I am so sorry. That was completely out of line." Graham waved him off gently. "It's not your fault. Sometimes these things happen. People are complicated. Situations are difficult. We'll move forward." But the audience could see the truth. Behind the grace, behind the professionalism, something inside him had been rattled. The tightness around his eyes, the slight tremor as he set down his glass. Even Graham Norton wasn't immune to the sting of a public attack. The show cut to commercial, but the damage was done. A friendly interview segment had imploded into hostility, leaving the entire room shaken. When they returned, Graham addressed it head-on. "I want to apologize to everyone watching at home," he said, voice steady but gentler than usual. "And to our wonderful audience here tonight. That's not the kind of show we aim to make, and it's certainly not what any of us expected this evening." The audience applauded, warm and supportive. Graham nodded gratefully. "We have two wonderful guests still with us," he continued, gesturing toward the couch. "And I think they deserve a proper interview without all the drama. So, let's talk about your new film, shall we?" The show carried on, but the energy had shifted. The actors did their best funny anecdotes, lively banter, everything they could to lift the mood. It worked, mostly. Laughter returned, first softly, then more freely. But a ghost lingered on stage, the shadow of what had happened. Those who had watched the show for years, who knew Graham's rhythms and tells, could see the toll. Behind the smile, behind the jokes, behind the impeccable hosting, something in him had tightened. During the next break, he leaned in close with the producers, exchanging hushed, serious words. This wasn't just an uncomfortable moment. It was a breach. Someone had walked into his house, into a space built on warmth and generosity, and treated him and everyone around him with contempt. Still, Graham pushed forward. He gave his remaining guests the respect and attention they deserved. He carried the room back to steadiness with sheer professionalism. And by the time the show neared its close, the atmosphere, while not fully healed, felt almost normal again. As the credits approached, Graham delivered his final remarks with his signature warmth. "Thank you all so much for being such a wonderful audience tonight. I know it wasn't quite the evening we expected, but I appreciate you rolling with it." More applause, true, heartfelt support. We'll be back next week with more guests, more fun, and hopefully no unexpected exits, he added with a wry smile. Until then, good night, everyone. The credits rolled. The audience filed out, buzzing with shock, disbelief, and the thrill of witnessing something that would dominate social media within minutes. The remaining guests hugged him. Crew members hovered nearby, still stunned. And Graham Norton, beloved host, master of charm, pillar of British television, sat alone at his desk for a moment, taking it all in. He had handled it with grace, with composure, with the quiet confidence that had defined his entire career. But that didn't mean it hadn't hurt. That didn't blunt the sharpness of being blindsided, insulted, and vilified on his own stage. Producers finally approached, gentle, careful, already strategizing the inevitable media storm. Graham nodded, smoothing his jacket one last time. He had done nothing wrong. He had offered space, respect, patience, everything a good host could offer. And in return, he had been torn apart. But he carried himself off the stage with dignity, past the lights and cameras and cables, because that's who he was. That's who Graham Norton had always been. Professional, gracious, and kind even in the face of someone who offered him none of those qualities in return. The studio doors closed behind him, and the space that had moments earlier pulsed with tension and disbelief now felt hollow and eerily quiet. The iconic red chair sat alone beneath the fading stage lights, a mute witness to everything that had unraveled. 36 seconds. That was all it took from her first cutting remark to the moment the entire tone of the evening veered off a cliff. 36 seconds in which a guest revealed not vulnerability, not honesty, but entitlement, and a willingness to strike out at anyone who simply happened to be standing nearby. And, through every second of it, Graham Norton had remained the consummate professional, the steady, good-natured host trapped inside an interview that seemed intent on destroying itself. He had done everything possible to guide it back on track, but some moments simply refused to be salvaged. As the last of the lights dimmed, the studio sank slowly into darkness. But the impact of what had taken place there that night wouldn't fade with the glow of the cameras. It would linger, one of those infamous television moments destined to be replayed, dissected, and remembered not for its brilliance, but for the spectacular way it fell apart. Graham Norton would go home that night knowing he had done everything right. He had been patient. He had been respectful. He had given his guests space, grace, and every opportunity to participate in a real conversation. He had tried to de-escalate, tried to listen, tried to maintain the easy warmth that made him beloved around the world. And in doing so, he proved once again why audiences trusted him, why celebrities adored him, why his show had become such a cherished part of British entertainment. Because even when someone tried to cast him as the villain, he refused to take the bait. He stayed true to exactly who he was. The guest who stormed off his stage that night may have believed she was making a stand, drawing a line, refusing to be handled. But all she truly did was expose the difference between a person who commands respect through their behavior and someone who tries to demand it through outrage. Graham Norton earned his reputation over years of kindness, wit, and genuine curiosity. He built a space where guests felt safe, where conversations felt organic, where laughter came naturally. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because he respects the craft, the people around him, and the audience watching at home. No amount of hostility from a single difficult guest could ever undo that. If anything, it highlighted it casting his grace in stark contrast to her hostility. The story of that night would be told again and again, with countless interpretations. But the truth was simple. A beloved host welcomed a guest onto his show with warmth and goodwill. She chose to respond with contempt and accusation. And through it all, he carried himself with dignity, showing everyone watching exactly what true class looks.